Tired of restless nights? At Lisa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Lisa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to lisa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
CareerBuilder is made for people who have that thing. You know, those superpowers that make you good at your job, the skills you bring to work. And CareerBuilder knows those skills make you right for other jobs too. Higher paying jobs with benefits, jobs you never thought of trying. Are you a people person? Work from home as a customer service rep. Are you organized and like driving? Become a delivery driver. You have the skills it takes, and CareerBuilder.com has the jobs to get you hired fast. Visit CareerBuilder.com.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk. He is Lance Meadow. The phone number for you is 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Coming off of Super Bowl 58, Lance, I was off by 2 points. I had 24-23 Chiefs as the prediction. It was 25-22. You were right in the neighborhood as well. I forget what your exact
I think I
score
said
was.
27-24,
yeah,
I believe. In that
we're all
yeah.
right in the same neighborhood. So you had the differential correct, 3 points. Went into overtime. Obviously a very exciting, close game. I think everyone's happy with that, Lance. And it just shows you in a game like this, when you have two teams, and we'll talk about some of the bigger picture stuff in a second, that are pretty evenly matched in terms of talent. It's going to be little moments, little things, little plays, little execution, small coaching decisions here and there that are going to make a difference in a game that have two teams that are both very, very good football teams.
Well, the one thing that jumps out to me to start is there were 4 turnovers in this game, John. Yep. I mean, that's a lot of turnovers for two teams that have been pretty good in that department throughout the course of the regular season. But as I always say with respect to Giants games,
what do you do with them?
Yeah, and only one of them a team scored a touchdown off of, or a team scored, period. And it was the muff punt that Mahomes then hit Valdez-Scantling on the short field. The other 3, zippo.
I will
Nothing.
say this, though. The McCaffrey fumbles deep in KC territory. So even though KC doesn't come away and score off of that turnover, it does take points off the board for the 49ers.
Well, and the Pacheco fumble was even closer. It was right in the red zone.
So both of those plays take points off for those prospective teams. And I put this up on Twitter last night. To me, this game was lost for the 49ers in the first half of this game. Because I feel like you got through that first half, Lance. The Chiefs did have that final drive to kind of get down there
with
and
the
kick field goal to make it a 7-point game. But the sense you got from watching that game, and I'm trying to check real quick how long that Chiefs drive was for the field goal. It was probably like 70 yards, right? It was a 70-yard drive. So before that 70-yard drive, Lance, the Chiefs had 80 total yards of offense in the first half. But it was just a 10-point game.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was the difference. The way the Niners outplayed the Chiefs in that first half, and the Chiefs' offense seemed pretty out of sort. They didn't get a lot of good rhythm going. They had a lot of 3-and-outs. You mentioned that one drive where Pacheco did fumble, obviously, which is a drive they did not get points off of. But you really got the sense that the Niners outplayed the Chiefs in the first half. And for it to only be a 7-point game at halftime, I thought was a huge red flag for the 49ers, especially given how the Chiefs in the second halves of these playoff games, one, on defense with Steve Spagnuolo, tends to figure out what the offense is doing, and he is able to scheme up and do a better job in the second half. And then Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to figure out what the defense is doing to him. And they did. And they ended up moving the ball much more consistently in half number 2. So for me, and that McCaffrey fumble not scoring on that long drive to start the game was part of it, because the Niners really did march the ball on that drive right down the field. I don't even think they had a third down on that drive, to be honest with you. It was a really easy drive for them, or if they did, it was third and short. To not come away
they only
with
had
points,
1 second down on that drive.
1 second down on that drive, right?
Yeah.
So for you to come away with no points on that drive and only be up 7 at halftime after what I thought was a half where they really outplayed the Chiefs, that to me is what gave the Chiefs the opportunity to make the type of comeback that they did.
They stayed within striking distance, to your point. And the Niners, they didn't put the Chiefs in a precarious spot where Mahomes and company really had to play catch-up and give Andy Reid something to think about where maybe he had to be a little bit more ultra-aggressive. And remember, the Chiefs' philosophy this season, John, has been, and it's amazing, I was looking at the numbers closer, even more so this weekend, they dipped by over a touchdown in scoring from 2022 to 2023.
Dink and dunk.
Yeah, they averaged over 29 points per game in 2022. It was just under 22 this past season. But you had the number 2 scoring defense in the NFL. And Harrison Butker, by the way, who broke Jake Moody's longest Super Bowl length kick within a fraction of 2 quarters, the man converted 96% of his field goals between the regular season and the playoffs and was 7 for 7 from 50-plus yards out. Butker was a weapon this season. I don't think enough people talk about that. And that showed up again in the playoffs and on the biggest stage.
And how about Jake Moody not missing an extra point all year, and then he gets one dropped, gets one blocked in the Super Bowl.
That's why when you say take the points, it's not automatic.
It just shows you, and this is kind of my theme that I wrote about in our cover 4, which I'm not sure if it's on Giants.com yet, but if it's not,
it can't be because I have yet to email. Mine's done. I haven't submitted it yet.
So I guess
I can
it's
assure
not
you,
up, folks.
unless Salomon is trying to pull a fast one and make it cover 3 this week,
no,
which was
I don't
the
think he
old
is.
formula and
that
the
is
old
correct.
label. Yes.
No, so it'll be up shortly when Lance submits his.
It's written. It's done. The document's there.
So why don't you send an email while we're doing
Well, because I need to proofread
Oh,
it
okay.
first.
That's fine.
See,
No,
I don't
point.
like to leave it in the
No,
editor's
neither
hands.
do I. I always
like to
proofread
make
as well.
sure. So there we go.
I think that's a good way to do it. I'm with you. So my kind of theme was, and the question that Dan posed to all of us was, what's your overall takeaway after the Super Bowl of the entire 2023 season? And I kind of focused a little bit more on the Super Bowl, but I expanded after the playoffs. And the point that I tried to make walking away from this game is that it's so hard to win a Super Bowl. And the things that a team must be successful at from both a macro and a micro perspective is what makes it so difficult, right? So this is kind of how I broke it down. Micro things happened in this game that allowed the Chiefs to win. We've already touched on some of them, right? The turnovers, scoring touchdowns in the red zone instead of settling for field goals like the Niners did in overtime. You made the decision to receive instead of kick off, and we could talk about that just as an interesting rules discussion at some point as well. Chris Jones on crucial plays, getting in Brock Purdy's face to prevent him from hitting wide open receivers down the field, right? Little things here or there. Travis Kelce, who they managed to shut down in the first half on a key play, just beats Fred Warner, right? Your best players win in the most important spots and most important circumstances. Not having penalties. Remember, the Niners had a couple penalties on drives that helped keep them out of the end zone.
Well, they had 3 on the offensive line in the first half, which was a killer.
And didn't they also have a false, I think in the overtime drive, didn't they have a 5-yard penalty
yes,
there at
they
some
did.
point as
a
well?
False start,
Yeah, that put them into a 2nd and 15, I think, right?
Yep.
So little things here or there, small things that have to happen for you to win these games. But while those are important, Lance, it's the macro things that put you in this position at all that I think matter the most. And this is what I think the Giants are in that phase right now, where you're still trying to get the macro correct, right? And when I say macro, you need to be a certain level of team to even be in these situations, to do the small things right, to win playoff games, to win Super Bowls, right? It's having, the way I put it in the article, it starts with the right quarterback and the right head coach, right? And the Giants think they have both of those. Then it comes down to, well, do you have enough playmakers around those guys, right? Do you have that Travis Kelce that can beat Fred Warner, the best coverage linebacker in football, on a one-on-one on a key third down? Do you have a Chris Jones on defense that can win one-on-one and get in Brock Purdy's face? Do you have your Trent McDuffie that can lock down some of the best wide receivers in the league one-on-one in the slot? Do you have L'Jarius Sneed who can do the same thing with outside receivers? Do you have enough of those special players combined with your quarterback and your coach?
All those guys drafted, by the way.
Correct. Do you have enough of those guys on your team to put yourself in the situation where those small things start to matter? And when I try to reflect this game and the season back on the Giants, I see them still in that macro mode where, and again, we got to see Daniel Jones with the injury too, right? How does he come back? How does he play? do you have enough great players on both sides of the ball to put you on a level of competition with teams like the Niners, like the Chiefs, go to the NFC even, teams like Dallas who, blew the Giants out a couple times this year, to compete in these situations. So that's kind of how I looked at the season and the game as a whole when I take a look at how you get to the point where you're in an overtime period for a Super Bowl with a team that has a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I think also if you just look at this game on an island, then I'll then piggyback off of your point. I mean, to me, the Niners had the Chiefs in a 2nd and 13 after Valdez-Scantling spun around like a dreidel and went backwards, okay? And you thought, okay, now...
Patrick Mahomes' reaction to that.
Well, what about Chris Jones? Chris Jones got up. He's not even on the offensive field. Chris Jones got up, walked to the edge of the sideline, and had both of his hands on his head saying, what is Valdez-Scantling doing? Now, in fairness,
Mahomes taketh away,
Mahomes then went back to Valdez-Scantling. I'll give Mahomes credit, and then he helped ease the transition to convert on 3rd down. But there were opportunities for the Niners to still put this game away, regardless of what happened earlier, which goes back to your macro level, how all of these little things add up. The other thing was I thought it was a tale of two halves for the Niners because it reminded me of, it's no coincidence, the team that solved the Kansas City riddle was the Bucs, okay? In 2020, the COVID year, how did the Bucs dismantle the Chiefs? Up front, in the trenches. But Todd Bowles didn't have to blitz in that game, John, okay? He won with his front four.
Because the Chiefs' offensive line was an injured mess.
But the Chiefs did not have Joe Thuney. And the tackles were a mess if you watch that first half.
First half.
I mean, Nick Bosa was having a field day. So
Chase Young, too, against Donovan Smith.
And Chase Young had a sack. Steve Wilkes did not have to blitz. They had 2 sacks. They had 3 quarterback hits. It reminded me, Steve Wilkes had the blueprint of Todd Bowles. The problem was, like any good team, the Chiefs made adjustments in the second half.
100%.
They weren't nearly as dominant in the trenches. So you've got to be able to adjust on the fly. That's what really separates the good teams from the great teams.
And I brought that up last week, right? Talking about the coordinators, right?
Spags.
How do you adjust back?
Well, because I was also thinking about this when we were talking about late last week, the Buffalo game. Josh Allen ran wild on the Chiefs defense. He did not do that in the second half.
And James Cook, too.
And James Cook, But Allen really had the backbreakers. Outside of that first drive, McCaffrey didn't do much of anything, John.
No, he didn't.
Look at the rushing numbers.
It was 3 yards per carry.
The rushing numbers for the Niners, and that's their bread and butter.
Now, he did a nice job on the overtime drive though. He had some nice carries on the overtime drive.
But you can live with 80 yards on 22 carries, 100%. And 11 is the longest run. If you told Spags that's going to be it, you're fine.
Yep.
Okay? The explosive play, the biggest of all, came from the Chiefs, the 52-yarder to Hardman. Unfortunately, Pacheco fumbled the ball.
Which, by the way, Mahomes, I'm sure when he looks back at that on tape, he's like, I should not have thrown that ball. Because if Deshaun Gibson, the Niners tight end,
there were 2 guys
safety, can pick up that ball, you could tell he had no idea that either the ball's in the air or he didn't. He just couldn't find it. That could have been intercepted. That was legit double coverage.
Well, and speaking of that, also the Juwan Jennings play, he got hammered by Trent McDuffie. The fact that ball got off for McCaffrey to catch it. Also, I don't know if you noticed, Nick Bolton is on the opposite side of the field. He gets bumped. He has a track.
Spencer Burford.
To maybe jump in and make the interception. I mean,
and
that's
those
the
little
level.
things. Those micro things, right?
All of those
small.
Things. Correct.
It was a hell of a throw by Jennings, by the way.
Yeah, well, he's a former quarterback.
He's about to get hammered.
He has experience in that in the collegiate level, and Shanahan did a nice job tapping into that. But all of these little things, it's the cumulative effect. And that's why everybody wants to pick out one play here or there. To me, it's not that easy to explain what's going on. And just to bring it back to your point about the Giants, and I wrote about this on Cover 4, is the Chiefs evolved from one season to another and also within the season, okay? Yep. And can the Giants do that when their offense struggles,
And
John?
by the way, we saw that, for example, in 2011 with the way the team came with the run game, couldn't run it, then the run game came back a little bit. And
even a little bit in 07, too.
100%.
Down the stretch. I mean, Ahmad Bradshaw, the big game against the Buffalo Bills. Spags' defense struggled immensely in those first 2 games. They got hammered. And then all of a sudden, things evolved and changed. It was interesting. I was talking to Dave Tollefson this weekend on my Sirius XM show.
Love Dave.
About playing for Spags and also playing for 2 different coordinators like the Niners did with DeMeco Ryans and Wilkes in Super Bowl. So there were a lot of good parallels. And he was even looking back and telling stories about that, things weren't great in the locker room in that 2007 season. Guys didn't like jumping back in coverage and weird things that were occurring. So, I don't know if that's talked about as much when you look back at the history of those 2 Super Bowl runs, specifically 07. But I didn't mean to get off topic. It was just on a related note. But to bring it back to the Giants and what you learned from the Chiefs, the Giants, we've been talking about this for the last few years, where the offense is anemic. For the lack of a better phrase, John, you put so much pressure on the other facets of your team that if they don't deliver, you're not going to win those close games. But I think what the Chiefs did a magnificent job of this season, they had a methodical offense where they didn't live and die by the long ball. To apply the baseball analogy, they settled for base hits and doubles this season. Okay, that was great. Andy Reid wasn't going for it on 4th down left and right because he said to himself, Harrison Butker is reliable. We can send him out there more often than not. We have faith he'll put points on the board. The defense did not give up over 25 points this season between the playoffs and the regular season more than one time. The Packers scored 27 in Week 13. That was it, John. Nobody scored 30 against the Chiefs. Nobody got to over 25 consistently. Staple of the team, consistent. So I just went over offense, defense, special teams. You apply that to the Giants over the last 2 seasons, you're not finding, okay, the offense comes down, the defense comes up, or the special teams comes out of nowhere. If you can't do that in the NFL,
complimentary football,
you don't stand a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more things I want to touch on. Just because you just brought up the whole 4th down situation and the Chiefs going for it on 4th down, then I want to bring it back to team building and the Giants before we get to your calls.
And overtime, I'm assuming?
Yes, that's in there too.
Sure.
That's the first point. Jay, Jason, and Jesse, the 3 J's, we will get to you in just a little bit. I promise you. So let's talk about it because it's the first time these new Super Bowl overtime rules were in effect.
Yep.
Half the announcers and people that follow the game had no idea what was going on. Apparently, half the 49er players didn't have any idea what was going on either, which, by the way, to me isn't that big of a deal. It's not the players' responsibility to have strategy and whether or not you receive. To me, that's not a huge deal.
I thought Bill Vinovich, by the way, did a nice job explaining it, though,
I thought he
to
did
both
too.
captains
I
before
agree.
the game started.
100% agree. And I think the Shanahan decision was interesting because for the fans that don't know, they have the coin toss start overtime. Niners win the toss, and the Niners decided to receive the ball. Now, if you know college football, which is similar to the NFL rules in some respect, both teams are going to get a possession, right?
Yep.
So the theory that I work off of, and this is also the theory that Andy Reid works off of based on what he said post-game.
College, by the way, you don't have to go the length of the field.
Correct.
So, that's a big difference.
I just meant in terms of both teams getting a possession.
Sure.
You want to see what the other team does first so you know what you have to do when you get possession of the football, right? The reason this is advantageous is, for one, if you need a field goal or a touchdown. But to me, the more important part of this, and I don't know if enough people have focused on this, is that you then have 4 downs at your disposal instead of 3, right? So, for example, the Chiefs had 4th and 1 on that drive, and they decided to go for it. Maybe if they had the ball first, 4th and 1, I think they'll go for it anyway, but they decide to punt. But the Niners, for example, they kick a field goal on a 4th and 6, I believe, right?
Yeah, because McCaffrey lost yardage.
If they know what the Chiefs do there's a chance the Niners might go for it there. You get a whole extra down. And to give Patrick Mahomes 4 downs to get a first down, guess what? He's probably going to be able to do it because he's Patrick freaking Mahomes. And
4th
he's really,
and 4,
really
by
good.
the way. Just looked it up. Yeah.
4th and 4, thank you.
Yeah.
So if the Niners know what the Chiefs have done there already, they might go for it there instead of kicking a field goal, right? Right? If the Chiefs there are up 3, for example, you might say, well, we don't want to tie the game with a field goal, and then the Chiefs have a sudden death possession to win. We're going to go for it here on 4th down instead of kicking it. So it changes the calculation having the 4 downs and knowing what you need instead of 3. I thought the Shanahan argument was interesting, is that if you get through those first 2 possessions and it's still a tie game, then you get the first sudden death possession to just kick a field goal to win. And I do understand why that might be a bigger advantage than knowing what you need to do, getting the ball second, and again, having the extra down. But for me, when Patrick Mahomes is the guy across from you, I feel like you need to give yourself the benefit of having that extra down and make the Chiefs, who, to your point, we're not a big go for it on 4th down, try to score touchdown teams, make them have the ball first, and then you can adjust off of what Patrick Mahomes does. Whatever you do, don't just give the ball to Mahomes and then he can control the result of the game with the ball in his hands on a Chiefs drive. Even if you score a touchdown to the Niners, Chiefs can go for 2. And then
Sure,
it's out of
yeah.
your control. So I don't want to do what I do and then say, all right, Patrick Mahomes, we'll trust our defense to stop whatever we need to stop to win the game. It's Patrick Mahomes. No, you can't trust that. So that's why I think Shanahan made the wrong decision, in my opinion.
Well, listen, I could see both sides of the fence.
And
I mean,
so can I.
My feeling is your defense has to get out on the field regardless based on these new overtime rules. Heck, if we had the old overtime rules, John, the field goal would have not ended the game.
Oh, that's correct.
Mahomes and company would have got a possession. Your defense still needs to go out and make a stop.
Would the Niners have gone for it on 4th and 4 if they knew a touchdown wins the game no matter what?
It's possible. It's possible that changes it. But I would argue, even with the new rules, you could argue Shanahan could have went for it on 4th and 4 and said, hey, I want the touchdown. I want to put more pressure on the Chiefs. And if I don't get it, well, they have to take over at the Kansas City 9. So that means they've got to go 91 yards to score a touchdown. That defense also had only allowed up to that point. Keep in mind.
Well, they would only need a field goal, right? Because if you don't make it on that 4th down.
Correct. They would have needed a field goal. But, I mean, once again, your
still
defense,
a long way to go, though.
It still is in position to make stops. And you put them in, once again, a 2nd and 13, and you let them get the first down. So I'm not letting that get off the hook. But I also look at the track record of the game. And, yes, it's Patrick Mahomes. But we talked about at halftime of this contest how the Niners defense held the Chiefs to a field goal, right, John? Okay, so then if you look at the second half, up to overtime, Kansas City then tacked on another field goal. Their lone touchdown was off the short field on the muff punt. I mean, outside of that, the Niners defense did a really good job keeping the Chiefs out of the end zone.
Out of the end zone, yes. But they did have 3 consecutive scoring drives, including a 69-yard drive and a 64-yard drive. But again, you're giving Mahomes the extra down.
No, and I get that.
That's what I don't want to do. I don't want to give Mahomes the extra down.
I understand that, but, I mean, once again, I think just from an overall philosophical standpoint, your defense is playing a role in this game.
Yeah,
you're not getting
100%.
off the hook. Your defense, Steve Wilkes and that unit still has to get out on the field and make stops and make it challenging on Patrick Mahomes. There was actually, if you recall, on that last drive, Kyle Shanahan used a timeout because it seemed as if he saw the defensive alignment and was saying, Steve, you're not running that play. We're not going out on an island. I think it was cover 0 or something that he was trying to be ultra aggressive.
How funny was Romo on that one play where they're showing cover 0 and he goes, oh, there's no way they're sending everybody. They're going to drop everybody back in coverage. And then they send everybody and Romo just goes, oh, that was a mistake. And then Mahomes hits Rice on the little crosser and he gets the first down.
Yeah.
I just thought it was such an honest, in-the-moment reaction from Romo as a quarterback. Yeah, no, you don't want to blitz Patrick Mahomes like that.
No, because
oh, no, there it is.
He's going to sense it, and what do you do?
Correct.
He dumped it off.
Correct.
And then if you send more guys, you have less guys down the field. I mean, that's football 101. And Rice has a favorable situation. Sure.
Romo, I thought, had a pretty good game. I thought he made good points on Chiefs clock management, too, at the end of the half when they didn't spike it and they tried to get that play off. When the clock went down from 31 seconds to 15 seconds, he made that point. I thought Romo had a pretty strong game.
The other important point was that also I think the new overtime rules sort of caught people off guard was the fact that the Chiefs, even if they didn't get that playoff at the very end, it's a new game. So the second quarter
That's
then starts
the end
all
of
over
the first
again.
quarter.
No, but
Correct.
I think a lot of people thought, oh my God, overtime's going to end and then it's going to restart. No, he specifically said that's why Bill Vinovich, I thought, did a nice job. It's a new game.
Yep.
We start from 0-0 from scratch, and we go quarter to quarter.
And Romo made that point. He was like, guys, don't worry about the clock.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then even on the NFL Network postgame show, Maurice Jones-Drew was like, oh, yeah, I saw the clock going down. I'm like, Mahomes, you guys didn't even look nervous. You didn't look nervous at all. And Mahomes is like, well, yeah. And then he and then he answered in a nice way where he didn't make Maurice Jones-Drew look like a dope who didn't know the rules even after watching the full broadcast.
Yeah.
But I thought that was funny. All right, final point. Oh, you have
no,
on the rules?
Well, I was going
The
to say.
only other factor on the coin toss I was going to bring up
what do you got?
is that the defense was just out there for that final
Yes,
drive.
that's a good point, too.
They did look a little tired at the end of that drive.
Yeah, and Pearson, to your point, they had those 2 long drives, the Chiefs, on their 2 previous possessions.
So
and
Shanahan is saying to himself, hey.
Now, Shanahan didn't mention that in the postgame presser, that was a factor. But a lot of fans did, when I said I would have had him kick, fans did point out on Twitter to me, Pearson, that they thought maybe the Niners defense might have been gassed. So that's a good point, and maybe that did play into it.
It could have very well influenced
it after the game.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know what exactly he was asked after the game. And, who knows, maybe good coaching staffs, John, as you know, they have assistants weigh in. maybe somebody from up top, told
Lance,
Kyle something as well.
This was not a Kyle in the moment decision.
No, I'm not saying that you were insinuating that.
And I'm not saying you are either, but I want to point that out for fans. These are every team now has their analytics team usually has a game management expert on that staff. And it could be an analytics guy, it could be a former coach. It doesn't have to be an analytics person. It could be a former coach, former head coach, like
a consultant of some sort.
That's thank you. Something like that where they'll meet, and Joe Judge had that guy when he was here. Brian Dable has Cade upstairs, who's a former college quarterback on the Giants analytics staff. He does that here. So they'll meet, and they'll talk about these type of scenarios during the week. If you get into this overtime scenario, what are we going to do? That decision was made back on Tuesday or Wednesday. That decision was not made in the heat of the moment on Sunday. Now, I'm sure Kyle, in that timeout at the end of regulation before the coin toss, talks to his clock management guy, and they say, all right, are we still on board with this? Yeah, this is still what we want to do, because obviously circumstances of the game and how the game flow goes might impact what you're doing. But generally speaking, that decision was made days previous to the game. That is not something like Kyle sitting there, let's receive. That's not how that goes.
Well, and they talk about this going back to the offseason once the new rule was implemented too, John. If you remember, there was a point, I don't know, it may have been around the Jets game or the Patriots game. Brian Dable was asked about how he would approach the new overtime rule and whether or not he was put in a position, did they talk about it? And he even said, yeah, we had discussions. He didn't reveal what he would have done, but I find it very hard to believe that there weren't discussions at some point this season in which the Niners contemplated, if we ever get into this situation, what would we do? I find that very hard to believe, given how much experience you have on the coaching staff. Whether or not the Niners players all knew the rules is irrelevant because they don't make the decision about whether or not they're going to defer or take the ball. All Fred Warner needs to know is, what did Kyle Shanahan tell you before you went up for the coin toss? And if he tells you, if you win it or you lose it, what do you do? Which direction you want to kick and so forth. That's all Fred Warner needs to know. He doesn't have to know the rules of overtime.
He does not.
Because it doesn't impact, from his perspective, the outcome of the game.
Final point in terms of team building, then we'll get to your calls. People talk about how you set up your quarterback position in the league, right? Do you pay him? Do you try to win with a guy on a rookie contract and then surround them because the guy is not making any money? Or do you pay the quarterback all the money and try to win? This was the test case. Right? You have Patrick Mahomes, who's making all the money.
Yep.
Not the biggest contract anymore, but it's right on.
Well, he's not on a rookie deal anymore, so.
Right,
yeah.
But my point is that other quarterbacks have been paid more than him. Bottom line, he still's got a huge contract, all right? And what's around Patrick Mahomes on offense, not so great. The amount of money they've spent, you have Travis Kelce, and then a bunch of guys that don't make a lot of money on the offensive side of the ball, right? Some guys on the offensive line certainly do. They pay Juwan Taylor. Creed Humphrey's going to make money. But they have the money focused on the quarterback, and they're figuring out things around him on offense, right? And a lot of young drafted players on defense too, Lance. Not a lot of high-paid players on defense.
But really good players.
Except for Chris Jones.
Yeah.
But yes, but guys are on rookie contracts, right? A lot of these guys. Niners are the opposite. Brock Purdy makes no money. They're paying Ayuk. They're paying Debo. They're paying McCaffrey. They're paying Trent Williams, right? They're paying all these guys around him to have the best possible team with the quarterback that's not making a lot of money. And is obviously not as talented as Patrick Mahomes, who is. This was not on Brock Purdy, by the way. You did see some of his limitations when there's rushers in his face, and he couldn't make some of those throws because he couldn't.
Well, that's more of Chris Jones. Remember,
sure.
Jones did the same thing to Jimmy Garoppolo.
And also
I was going to say in 2019, and Josh Allen too.
Game, for sure.
But he had the big deflection on Jimmy G. People forget late in that game.
But I do think that's when you have, if you have the quarterback that isn't as physically imposing and talented as others, maybe they can't overcome some of those things like some of the bigger and better, more accomplished quarterbacks can, because they just don't have the physical talent to do it. But that's not the overall point. How do you go about beating Patrick Mahomes? Now, like if you're sitting there in the AFC, hell, in the NFC, if you want to win a Super Bowl, right? How do you build a team to beat Patrick Mahomes? You know, these last two Chiefs teams are probably, in terms of overall, metrics and on offense and stuff like that in the regular season, they're probably two of the worst Chiefs teams that he's had in terms of things like that.
2022, they were scoring nearly 30 a game. So,
right.
I mean,
but
they weren't
but you
as
didn't have
bad or
Tyreek
as
Hill.
rough as they were. No, you didn't have Tyreek Hill, but you had more explosion than you had this season.
Sure.
I will say that.
But how do you now build a team? Like, what's your goal? Can you build a team to beat Patrick Mahomes if you don't have that alpha quarterback, like the Bengals had Joe Burrow, right? That's how they were able to beat him. They had that other alpha quarterback that just played a little bit better than Patrick Mahomes. Can you do it with a middling quarterback that you also have to pay? Is that even possible? Can you beat a Patrick Mahomes-led team if that's what your structure is? You know what I mean? I think it's just interesting to know how you structure your salaries on your team to try to create a winner to beat Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you almost have to do it perfectly in order to do it. It's really, really, really tough based on what we've seen these last 2 years with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl.
Well, you got to win up front. I go back to the Bucs. It's no coincidence, John. That's the team that beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl on the biggest stage, and they did it because the guys manhandled the Chiefs' offensive line. And the Chiefs' offensive line is not this dominant group where you can't get any penetration. So that's how you build the team. You build the team in the trenches, and then you need really good cover guys, too. That's the one thing that also stood out to me about the Chiefs' defense. That's why I think Spags and Brett Veach, their general manager, deserve a lot of credit. They drafted L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. You could have made an argument, actually. McDuffie deserves Super Bowl MVP. I thought McDuffie was outstanding yesterday. He made a play on Purdy off a blitz on the previous drive that forced them to kick the field goal with Moody.
On that third and
Got
four.
his hand up and deflected. How about the play he made on Samuel in the end zone, where he reached up with his hand.
Great play.
Early in the game.
No, he had great coverage the whole game.
McDuffie had an open field tackle on George Kittle. I would have voted for Trent McDuffie. If you could tell me all you want about Mahomes' final drive, I would have given it to McDuffie.
If he didn't have the big holding penalty on the 3rd and 12 that allowed the Niners to get that field goal, I think you have a better sell. But that was a critically bad play in a really big spot.
Well, I would argue there were a few where Mahomes ran up the middle, was tackled, where he could have thrown the ball away, including that last play on the final drive.
He also had an interception in the first half. 100%.
So, he had some hiccups along the way, too.
I'm with you.
Everywhere I looked on defense, I saw Trent McDuffie. And
Chris Jones was always in the backfield, too. He made some really nice
which
plays
goes back to the trenches. So, to me, if you want to go back to your question, how do you beat the Chiefs? Well, look at how the Chiefs have constructed their team. I'm not saying get Mahomes, okay? It's not that easy, John. But
that's the problem. But eventually you still get to the thing is how do you beat Mahomes?
but the way you slow him down is you got to have a good defense.
I'm debating whether or not I should annoy you right now.
You're going to annoy me?
He's kind of getting borderline Jordan level in the NFL.
Oh, well, it's football. I don't care what he does. You wouldn't bother me about that.
But it's
got nothing to do with the NBA.
If you're a team in the AFC, you have to feel like those Eastern Conference teams looked at Jordan, right? Like you can build the team as good as you can, but eventually that's the guy that's waiting for you at the end. That eventually you have to beat that guy. And damn, it's hard because damn, he's good.
Well, but with Jordan, and this is why I don't like the basketball to football comparison, Jordan also killed you on defense too.
Sure.
As much as he did on offense.
I just mean in terms of the galactic figure that's waiting for you.
I understand.
Like he's Thanos. Like he's got all 5 jewels in the gauntlet.
And I hate to go this way, but since you brought it up, I'm going to say it because football, it's not quarterback records, it's not individuals, It's everything. But Mahomes does have a blemish on the biggest
stage. He lost to Tom Brady, and he actually said that in his post-game thing.
Yep. And that was the other thing I was going to mention because he didn't have to do that.
Right.
He didn't have to make the media arguments a little bit easier. He went out and admitted that in a team setting, his team lost head-to-head to Brady. But Mahomes has a blemish. Jordan doesn't.
I understand.
So
yes,
there's a difference there.
And that's why I knew I was going to get you annoyed.
Oh, no, you didn't get me annoyed. I thought it's a fair dialogue and talking point. I went there gladly.
He lost twice to
I don't have a problem.
201.
Well, there you go. In the AFC Championship, you're talking about.
Yes, he did. That is correct. Yes.
So
201-939-4513. 201-939-4513.
How many times did the Knicks lose to the Bulls, by the way?
Way too many for me to
just
even
wanted
count.
to make sure.
Jordan did lose to the Pacers and Reggie Miller, by the way, just for the record.
Well, when did he lose to them? Hold on. When did that happen?
When he on his comeback season.
Oh. They lost to Orlando.
Oh, Orlando. I'm sorry, not the Pacers. Orlando. My bad. Orlando.
Be careful.
Wrong team.
Be careful.
They still lost to somebody.
Well, but, again, he played, 19 games? Relax. Okay?
See, and now he's upset.
No, well, now I'm upset when you get those facts wrong.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I got the team wrong. You're right.
Okay?
I got the team wrong. You're right. It was Orlando, not Indiana. That's my bad. You're right. That was Shaq and Penny. 100%.
That's right.
And then Nick Anderson showed up in the finals. 201.
Oh, did he ever?
939.
Yeah. Just ask
Or-
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yes, correct. 201-939-4513.
Who
Go
beat
check
the
out the
Knicks, by the way, in the 94 finals.
I'm aware.
but-
Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Go
Yes.
check out the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants.
went
great,
there.
great interviews up there coming up tomorrow. I wasn't even taking shots at Jordan.
Oh, no,
by
no,
the
no.
way. I was being very complimentary.
we
of
were
him,
okay.
just for the
Well,
record.
But then
I
you
did not
went.
take any shots.
Then you took a deep dive into the deep end of
Yes,
the pool.
the fact is he lost once in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I'm not
That's
disputing
fine.
that. Well, no, it was
That's
the Eastern
okay.
Conference semis, by the way.
That's right. Because then the Magic beat the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals.
That's right.
That's
Yes.
correct. Anyway, go check out the Giants Huddle podcast. Coming up tomorrow, it's not out up yet. I talked to Paul Kaharski, who's covered the Titans for a long time. He gives a really good lowdown on everything Shane Bowen and the other various guys the Giants have gotten from the Titans over the past couple of weeks. So
Tim Kelly as well.
Yeah, correct. Make sure you go check that out. It's coming up tomorrow on the Giants Huddle podcast. Good episode, and the one that's up there right now, Jim Nagy covers everything that happened at the Senior Bowl. So go check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast. And while you're at it, check out draft season as well. Subscribe to all of our podcasts. Just search for it in your favorite podcast platform. All right, guys. Sorry. Took me a while to get to you. I had a lot of ground to cover there. But let's get to you now at 201-939-4513. Let's go to Jay in Phoenix. He's up first. Jay, what's happening?
First off, all that Michael Jordan talk is triggering me.
No, I understand, Jay. Let's move
So he
on.
does have a
Give
blemish.
Lance less reasons to talk about Jordan. I brought him up.
if
It
it
was
tr-
my fault.
Well, if it triggers you, I'm all ears. We can reissue the
Here's the deal.
facts if you'd like. Yes.
He does have a horrendous blemish. The dude couldn't hit a high fastball.
No, it was a curveball, actually, but that's okay.
Anyway, no, just two things. I want to talk about the Super Bowl, and then right in line with what you guys are talking about, and then also Giants coaching staff changes.
Sure.
But looking at it and looking at the Giants' blueprint and the blueprint of the teams that the two teams that were in the Super Bowl last night, but then also the success the Giants have had over the years, it's defense, like you guys are talking about. Investing in pass rushers. The Giants. Tom Brady was that guy. Super Bowl 42 was the guy that was undaunted, the best. Was starting to build that reputation as best ever, and the Giants just pounded the heck out of him and found a way to keep him to 13 points. And I think, because that's the way I was looking at that game yesterday. I'm like, I'm rooting for the Giants. I want to see them build and develop. But how do we get to the point where you actually can beat Mahomes? Because he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but Jay, here's
He's
the
just
trick,
not
though.
going
The
anywhere.
Giants already had their Eli Manning at that point, and Eli Manning played
I
lights
know.
up during those two playoff runs, too. So that's the
I
difference,
know.
too. And I made this point in cover 4. You talk about plays, guys, your stars making the best plays in the most important moments. That's what made Eli special, right? He played his best football in those 8 playoff games during those 2 playoff runs, didn't turn it over, was productive, and he made big plays. You need that. That's the macro part of this, right? You need that before you can start checking the other boxes.
Well, and also, in fairness, you had David Tyree and Akeem Nicks
Helping
make
you
two
out.
huge,
100%.
very
Mario
rare
Manning
plays.
too.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had the playmakers on the big stage come through as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the point with the quarterback. Like, what is it that we need to find in a quarterback? Because you look at Patrick Mahomes and you look at even Brock Purdy last night, even though I'm a believer in Brock Purdy. These aren't, at least my impression, I don't get the impression that Patrick Mahomes is the biggest, he's not a physical specimen like Josh Allen. I don't know if he has as good of an arm. Maybe he's more accurate. But it just seems like he has elite level processing and able to keep the play going.
Yeah.
And
That's a
I
big part of it.
I don't know if the Giants have a quarterback on the roster who can do that.
Jay, he's also an elite thrower of the football. And while maybe he doesn't have Josh Allen's arm, the different arm angles, throwing on the move, the creative throws he can make off platform, that's to me what sets Mahomes apart, right? Where a guy can be in his face, he's rolling, he's throwing it around the defensive
Sidearm throw,
lineman,
yeah.
all those sorts of things combined with his accuracy and processing, to your point, and I do think he's elite in those areas as well. And he has, while he's not Josh Allen, he has a plus arm. It certainly is one of the better arms in the league, maybe if not the best. I mean, Patrick Mahomes does not have a weakness. Like, what's the weakness in Patrick Mahomes' game? A few years ago, he was a big play hunter. And then when teams started taking that away, he struggled a little bit for a while in that one season. But you know what? Then he said, oh, I know what to do now. And now he's figured it out where he doesn't need to make big plays in order to win games. So he really doesn't have a weakness, which is what makes him so special.
Well, the other thing is, and I think this applies to Brock Purdy too, and I think he does deserve credit because you don't throw 31 touchdowns and 11 interceptions by luck over the course of a season, and he took advantage of all the weapons around him, is these two quarterbacks were consistent, meaning you know what you're getting out of them. That's what you need in a quarterback. Yeah. I mean, outside of the game for Purdy against the Vikings on Monday Night Football this season when he threw 2 late interceptions, and the Baltimore game when the Ravens just wreaked havoc against everybody on the field, Purdy was pretty much a straight line this season. You knew every time he'd get on the field, you knew exactly what you were getting out of him. And Mahomes, over the course of his career, has been pretty much that way. So I would argue, going back to your question, what do you need in a quarterback? You need to know that over the course of 17 games, it's not like a roller coaster, and that you get 8 good games and you get 9 not-so games. You can't have it be so up and down over the course of a season.
And look, Purdy has elite anticipation. He has elite processing, but he doesn't have some of the physical tools. Like I mentioned, when he had guys in his face, it's hard for him to make those throws when guys are bearing. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He has a good enough arm, but he doesn't have a Mahomes arm even, right? In terms of strength or that creativity to throw off platform, right? Now, he can run and roll out. He's actually pretty mobile, Purdy. I think he is pretty good creating plays when they're not there.
He did against the Lions.
It's hard when a guy's in his face. Anyway, Jay, go ahead.
And then, so those are all great. I appreciate that because you look at the quarterbacks, you just want to, I know the Giants are saying they believe in Daniel Jones. I desperately want him to succeed, but I just don't know if we have. He's such a specimen physically. He looks the part. But is it ever going to connect? So, anyways,
well, because it's how you use those tools, Jay. That's the key. You can have it, but how do you use them?
Great point. And then last point, just about the coaching staff. I was just kind of waiting until the call in until after everything was all settled. But having been in leadership positions for work throughout my career, when you have a divisive element among your ranks, I'm amazed that actually the Giants were not even more dysfunctional last year. And the fact that the guys that they brought in, I actually like the defensive coordinator they brought in, Bowen. I think even though people were saying maybe he's their third choice, he's a young guy with experience calling a defense. I think he's going to be able to be. I think he's going to bring out the best in what we have. It was very optimistic to read that article about Bobby Okereke, already meeting with him and feeling good. And so I'm optimistic. You look around the NFL, there's a lot more turnover within teams, as we all want to admit. They focus so much on the negativity between Dable and everybody. I'm sure everybody's got opportunities to reflect and improve. But I think, this isn't unique to have to replace coordinators and coaches. So, anyway, that's my last thing.
Appreciate the call, Jay. And look, I think Okereke, if you look at what the Titans have had on linebacker over the years, Okereke certainly mixes and matches that type of prototype to what they had in David Long, for example. Similar type of size players, speed, that sort of thing. So,
and I think any coordinator that gets a new job, it's pretty much protocol to talk to your players as soon as possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No different than a new head coach comes in. First thing he does, as soon as he gets settled in, picks up the phone, starts reaching out to guys. I mean, that's how you build relationships. So, I'm not taking anything away from the Giants, but I guess my point is, John, I don't think that's unique to Shane Bowen. I think if you ask and survey the majority of coaches around the league, they follow the same protocols.
201-939-4513. Jesse in New York is up next. Hi, Jess.
Hello.
Hello, Jesse.
Yep. Hey, how's it going, John? How's it going, Lance?
We're good. Doing all right. What do you got?
So I want to quickly talk about the Super Bowl, my own little tidbits and reactions, and then I'll talk about what hopefully will happen this offseason, and then kind of get your opinion on what you guys think.
Sure.
I don't like either team, but I was really hoping the Niners would finally win for their fans because, they've been 7 trips to the AFC Championship game and 3 trips to the Super Bowl, and they've come away with nothing, and it's just you got to feel for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Jesse, I hear you, but as someone that experienced the 49ers in the late 80s and early 90s, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy. I got to be honest with you. There are scars there.
I agree. Trust me, I agree. I agree. I know they're not in our division, but they are rivals.
Yep.
Historical rivals to the Giants. So at the end of the day, it was a lose-lose. I didn't want either team to win, but
I don't mind the Chiefs, Jesse. Honestly, I don't mind the Chiefs. Why do you dislike the Chiefs?
I think it's more just honestly jealousy. I'm just tired of watching the Giants.
I get it.
Mediocre, and I mean, you know what I want really? It's just it's been 12 years since they won the Super Bowl, and I want that feeling. I want to see the Giants win, and seeing the Chiefs come up, because, I mean, those days the Chiefs were like constantly never in the playoffs and they were never winning, and now they're just a dynasty, and it's insane.
And the thing is, Jesse, Patrick Mahomes is just so darn likable, to be honest with you. Like, I have a hard time getting annoyed that Patrick Mahomes wins because, if you go back and you watch the Netflix quarterback series last year, everything in public and private that you hear about the guy, I haven't heard one person say one bad thing about Patrick Mahomes, ever.
Yeah, no, it's nothing against him. It's not anything. I don't think he's a bad person or anything. He's just so darn good. And
I got you. I totally get it.
Well, and also
I want the Giants to have that so bad.
Well,
but,
I think also what Kansas City's accomplished is impressive because the only other team is New England that's been able to maintain that level of consistency. So you're seeing history right now. Okay, how many teams have gone to 4 and 5 years?
This is a dynasty.
Yeah, and have won 3.
It's a dynasty.
Yeah.
I will say that this year, especially this year, more so than the last couple of years for the Chiefs, this year is like Spags deserves all the flowers because that defense lights out. I mean, it reminds me of 07. Like this year, the offense didn't, like they had that stretch where they were just not playing well, but the defense just kept them in it, and I don't know, man, just especially yesterday, that first half, that offense. I really thought that San Francisco was going to run away with it, and the defense kept them in the game. Chris Jones and Snead, and like I think it was Lance who just
McDuffie.
Said McDuffie had that beautiful block on Debo and that beautiful blitz that I was just like, oh my God, it was just beautiful to see. Like defensively, it was like that to me. I think it was more defense than offense, but
Jesse, even a guy like Mike Pennell too on defense. He put Trent Williams on his butt. He was all over the place. He was on the practice squad earlier this year. 100%. I'm with you.
Yeah, and there were a couple of cues where I figured that the Niners were going to lose McCaffrey fumbling, which almost never happens. You don't see McCaffrey fumble. So it's like to see him fumble. To me, that was like that first cue. I was like, "Oh no, the Niners are not."
That was a killer.
And then the one other play was the special teams turnover. It was literally Kyle Williams. All I could think about after that was that play. It was just like, wow, I just turning the ball over like that.
That's a fire drill.
Oh my God.
This one was more bad luck. The Kyle Williams was just don't catch the ball, dude. Right?
Yeah.
But this is more like. It's a 50-yard wide field, and for the ball to hit that exact spot where the guy's ankle happens to be, that's a lot of bad luck.
Well, that's why it was a heads-up play, actually, by Ray McCloud, because he actually noticed it and went after it. Unfortunately, should have fell on it as opposed to try to scoop it. I don't know why guys try to scoop.
At first,
they always try to scoop.
At first, I thought the ball had bounced up enough where he couldn't fall on it and he had to scoop it, but I looked at it again.
He had an opportunity.
No, it was on the ground.
And listen,
fell on it.
You could jump on it and it could bounce off of you. It's not an exact science. I understand that, but stop scooping while you're upright.
Just fall on the ball.
Just get on the ball and secure.
That's what they said on the broadcast. It was like it was a good heads up play by McLeod, but drop on the ball. Don't try and scoop it and run. It was just drop on the ball. But I will disagree in Shanahan's decision to take the ball first. I don't really think he should have just kind of let Mahomes do whatever he was going to do and then put the ball on his offense. And I know the defense was tired. I know that's what they were saying, but I don't know. I think I think it was the wrong decision. And then I will disagree with John on the fact that some of the players are saying they didn't know the overtime rules. To me, and this is not something that I'm just saying, but like I heard a lot of like Shannon Sharp and a lot of the guys on talk shows this morning like why would you admit that, dude? Like that's honestly a little bit
did somebody admit it, though? Did somebody go on the record specifically and say that, or is that speculation?
Juszczyk did, for sure.
Did he admit it?
Yeah,
okay.
Armstead and Juszczyk said that, and I mean, Shannon Sharp, Jeff Saturday, they were like, why would you admit that? Like, that's just like an indictment on your coach.
Of the coach, yeah. No, that's fair. Sure.
Because, I mean, it's not a rule that just I know it came into play last year, but it's like, we haven't gone into overtime in the playoffs, but it was just like, I would have never, to me, that's just a little more embarrassing than anything.
No, I think that's a very good point because it leads to more speculation. You're adding fuel to the fire, which is unnecessary, and appreciate the phone call. The one thing, that I will say, and this piggybacks off of what I emphasized earlier in the program, Kyle Juszczyk may have not known the rule, but that's not necessarily, you can't jump to the conclusion that Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff don't know the rule. They may not have emphasized it to the team because, once again, How does it change Kyle Juszczyk's approach to overtime, whether he knows the ins and outs of the rule?
No, it doesn't.
Okay?
At least you wouldn't think.
No, I wouldn't think. So I think Shannon Sharpe, and once again, I hate commenting on things when I haven't heard what they said, but I'll take the caller's word for it. I just think you can't jump to these conclusions automatically, even if a player does open his mouth and says something that probably is better left unsaid.
Well, based on what he said, Shannon Sharpe was based, even if you're a player and you didn't know the rules, don't admit you didn't know the rules after the game.
No, of course.
Lie about it.
Sure, yeah. Or just say, yeah, we were aware,
Right.
but, once again, we don't get caught up in the ins and outs of the rules. Something generic like
All
that.
right, we have an open line of 2 folks. If you want to try to squeeze in here, we got about 10 more minutes to take a couple more calls. Let's go to Jason in New Haven. He's up next. Hey, Jason.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Good. Thanks for taking my call. Just a few things.
Well, what's a few things with you? You say you got 6 things, then you go to 7. So can we say?
Lance, that was one time.
I don't know,
That was one time,
but I told you
man.
I'm an elephant. I don't forget these things, so I want to set some parameters here. Okay, I want to get an idea of how many things. Yeah.
I won't take up too much time, but I know you guys are. I don't know if it was Lance or John that mentioned. How do you beat some of these, top tier kind of Hall of Fame kind of quarterbacks? And I think a previous caller mentioned our DNA in 2007. That's kind of, when I say that, it really makes me appreciate Eli, because San Fran, in my opinion, had a similar setup to what we had in 07 and part of, I'll focus on 07. Excellent defensive lines. In that first half, Mahomes couldn't do anything. Like, that D-line the San Francisco D-line was, in my opinion, incredible in that first half. But the difference is, I believe, Purdy played a solid game, but he couldn't come up with that one elite or iconic play, in my opinion. And Eli did that twice with the helmet catch, and in 2011, that pass he made to Manningham up the sideline.
No, 100%. Jason, look, and Purdy had the chance, too, right? He had Debo wide open for a touchdown and the pass rusher coming into his face, and he overthrew him. So you're right. The opportunities were there, but it would have taken a really, really good throw under pressure to make that pass.
Wasn't there one to Ayuk, too,
There
I
was.
feel, in the
Yep.
end zone as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, the one to Ayuk is the one that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if Ayuk slowed down on the route. I couldn't tell, but he was definitely wide open. He had the corner beat by at least 3 or 4 yards.
That was on the left sideline, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Ayuk went right, the pass went to the left. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that would be my thing. Like I said.
Now, that also might have been a mistake by Ayuk, too, depending on what the leverage of the defense, whether you're supposed to take that in or take it out. So I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't think we know for sure whose fault that one was.
Right. And then, well, I'll include myself. I think I'm a little more reasonable as a fan, but as a fan, sometimes I feel like at least Giants fans have this thing where, the sky is burning. And when I say that, I mean to say, all right, has our team been good the last few years? No, we haven't. I'll be the first to admit we've been struggling, dealing with injuries, turnover in the coaching staff. All kinds of factors have kind of put us in this position. But I would like to say this, right? And is San Francisco a better team than us? Absolutely. Right? At this moment, they are. But it goes to show you how hard it is to win a Super Bowl, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Shanahan, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he?
He's 0-3.
0-3.
He's 0-2 as a head coach and 0-1 as an assistant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And, San Fran, since the 90s, and even Dallas, I hate to bring them into the equation, but just these two teams, yes, right now they're better than us. Yes, they are. They have upper echelon talent across the board. But it goes to show fans that, it's not easy winning a Super Bowl. I mean, San Fran on paper really had one of the, I would say, top 2 or 3 rosters, if not top 1 roster in the league.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, they were a number 1 seed in the NFC.
No, Jason, you're absolutely
that's all you
right.
got to look at, the record.
And they came up short from, myriad of reasons last night. Field position, some big plays, Mahomes, different factors. But roster from 1 to 53 is probably the best in the league. And they came up short. So it just goes to show you, and I know Giants fans in particular were hard on our team. And, there's a standard with the Giants. We're one of the better organizations in the league. But I just don't understand certain fans, and this is not for you guys, but certain fans that call in And all they do is to seem to me is complain. Well, Dable's the issue. Daniel Jones is the issue. This guy's the issue. Shane didn't draft well. Look at where Mahomes was picked. Nobody saw this from Mahomes coming out of Texas. I don't care who you are. Nobody saw Mahomes turning into what he is now when he came out of Texas.
Well,
Tech.
Jason,
if I'm not mistaken, was he a top 10 pick? I don't even remember.
I think he was 13th or something.
Yeah, he was between 10 and 15 somewhere. He was somewhere in that
and
area.
Kansas City moved up to get him.
Correct.
Andy Reid really liked him. There was talk, I
Right.
mean, and a lot of people that spoke to Andy Reid, he was giving them hints. Hey, what do you think of Mahomes? Because we really like him. He was the 10th overall pick.
And
I just looked it up.
And the GM also, not Veach. Who was there before Veach that had the issues? And then I believe
John Dorsey.
John Dorsey was also a huge Mahomes guy. Dorsey was
he went to Cleveland.
was somebody that really pushed that as well.
Right. So I just say to bring it back to the Giants. I'm still a believer. I called last week. I love the hire. I think I was talking to you, Lance. I don't know if John was on the show at the time, but I like the Bowen hire. He's coordinated. I know I'm repeating myself, but he's coordinated some really good defenses in Tennessee. And, Kafka's saying, I like that we're keeping the D-line coach and the corners coach, it seems like, from reports. So I like where we're going. Now, do we have to get healthy, catch some breaks? I'm still a believer in, as we saw last night, fellas, the D-line for Kansas City and, of course, San Francisco. Both of those D-lines were amazing last night, in my opinion. Now, I know McCaffrey had some pretty good runs, but when it was time to clamp down, Kansas City's D-line was
absolutely, for sure.
really good last night.
And by the way, not just the D-lines,
like
Kansas City's corners and secondary were pretty damn good, too.
Yeah. Well, McCaffrey ran into a brick wall in the red zone when they had to settle for a field goal. Go back and look at that last drive. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would like to see – I've always been a big proponent of let's build up these lines. That's where our better bread and butter was in a lot of these Super Bowl runs. A strong running game and a dominant defensive line. And last point, I thought – Lance, I'm with you. That McDuffie, I mean, I don't know why he doesn't get a lot more publicity, but he's an awesome corner. I remember that pass breakup
he was a first-round pick, remember?
Samuel.
Yeah. He was a first-round pick.
And I believe McDuffie was all-pro this year, too.
Yeah, he was.
So
yeah, the pass breakup on Samuel was a big play. I didn't really hear a lot of people talking about. And then that when Spag sent them on the blitz to kind of disrupt Purdy. And then the last play, I'll take it off the air. I think this kind of turned the game. I could be wrong, but from watching the game and the energy this guy brought to the defense, I think that Drake Greenlaw injury really kind of, I don't want to say took the air out of San Fran because he was still in the game. But, man, I just love watching him play. Just as a Giants fan, I just love football. I know they have Fred Warner, who's probably the best middle linebacker in the game, but just watching Greenlaw and the intensity he plays with and the passion and the way he hits and the way he moves, I just feel like it took a little sail out of the air last night when he went down. I'll take it off the air, but thank you guys for taking my call.
Thank you, Jason. Even from an emotional perspective, you don't have Drake Greenlaw on the field. I mean, you could tell, and Tony Romo made the point a couple times, that they started targeting the player that replaced him. I forget the player's name that replaced him was. You have it in front of you there. But
Oren Burks, I think.
Yeah,
was the guy
and they started going at him a little bit. If you don't have Warner on Kelsey, then you have Burks on Kelsey. That's a matchup you like, certainly. And that comes back to luck, too, right? You need luck to win Super Bowls, right? They got lucky. The ball hit the Niner player in the ankle, and they recovered a fumble. Deebo Samuel pulls his hamstring in the Super Bowl. Greenlaw running onto the field pops his Achilles tendon. I mean, go later in the game when Kittle ended up hurting himself, had to miss a few plays.
Yeah, and then he came back.
Right,
yeah.
But there's luck involved, too, here. Like, you just need things to go right. And this goes back, he made the point where the Giant fans making the comparison, in some ways, Giant fans got spoiled in 07 and 11, right? It's only 2 times or 2 of 4 times during the Eli Manning era that they made the postseason. He just went to the Super Bowl and won. Like, there are teams that make the playoffs every year and win 12, 13 games. The Giants won 9 and 10 games those years, right?
The Giants are the swing and miss philosophy.
Right.
They either hit the home run or they strike out.
So, it is, you can build a great team and you just might not be able to get over the top. The Giants just so happened to, when they made those 2 playoff runs, they just happened to win all their games. You know what I mean? It could easily went a different way.
Well, and also, I mean, talking about luck, it alludes back to what I was talking about earlier. I mean, think about all of the big plays that occurred to get them to win the Super Bowl, John. And it's not just Hakeem Nicks and David Tyree. You know, the Ahmad Bradshaw play against the Niners, which is still debated to this day about whether forward progress took into consideration. Kyle Williams losing not one but two fumbles, and that set up a shortened field. I mean, we could go through.
And again, we're not making
a lot
excuses
of
here.
No, it's just
all
takes
teams
a
get
lot.
this type of luck.
It takes a lot. No, that's why I thought the last caller, Jason, using the Niners as an example to say, hey, they haven't won a Super Bowl since '94 is an excellent point. It's hard.
It's hard.
You could get
Very
there
hard.
and you still may not win.
I mean,
I think that point was well taken.
Even in baseball, all the times the Yankees won World Series in the late '90s, luck things happen. You know, Jeffrey Mayer.
What about Jeter's rally against the A's at home?
Yeah.
To, get the out.
If
Jeter doesn't get that throw off a fraction of a second, maybe the Yankees don't even get out.
There's a million moments over the course of any run where you catch breaks, you get lucky. I mean, how about the Niners play against the Lions? Hits off the guy's face mask and goes right to the player for the reception. I mean, there's a million moments here or there where you just need good fortune on your side.
Yeah.
And one play here or there will do it for you. And that's why it's so hard to win, right? It's just really, really hard. And this is the last thing I'll say. And he says, well, how do you try to beat a guy like Mahomes? Well, you try to find a guy that's as close to Mahomes as you can get, right? And that's why when we have all these, bringing us back to what our offseason conversations are going to be, right? When we have these conversations and you're sitting there, if you're in the draft and you think you see a quarterback sitting there that can give you elite level play, it's very hard to pass on that player because of the difference it makes for your franchise. So I think just as we look at an overarching picture of this offseason, that's one thing to always remember moving forward. You know what I mean? That's not to say that the team doesn't believe in Daniel Jones, that they don't think he's going to be the starter in week 1, but there's an injury history, and the Giants are picking 6th overall, okay? So if a guy's sitting there that you think is going to be a super-duper star, Herbert, a Burrow, a Mahomes, a guy on that level, you cannot pass on that player. And in the worst-case scenario, if you wind up having 2 really good quarterbacks on your roster, ain't a bad thing.
No, it's a good problem to have, yeah. Especially given the injury rate that we've seen at the position.
Look at where the Bears are now, right? And I think Justin Fields and Daniel Jones are very comparable players, right? Daniel Jones has won a playoff game. Justin Fields hasn't. But in terms of their regular season resumes, I think they're similar, right? They're on the same tier of guys. And now the Bears are making the same type of tough decision this year with Fields that the Giants had to make when they put their 5th-year option on Daniel Jones, right? Similar type of situation. You don't think the Bears are pumped that not only do they have the 1st overall pick in the draft and they can get Caleb Williams, boy, if we want to trade Justin Fields, we can get a nice haul back. Having 2 really good quarterbacks isn't a bad thing. And having 2 guys in the building to try to make sure you get that position right. And if it turns out to be that Daniel Jones gets that position right, awesome. If it turns out that the guy that you draft gets that position right, awesome. But you have to have that position right. And if that position is not right, all these other things we're talking about, Lance, doesn't mean squat.
Well, also, you look at Mahomes we were bringing up. Kansas City had to move up. They had to give up capital to get him, by the way. Let's not forget that.
They had a pretty good quarterback on their roster when
and Alex
they did
Smith.
it.
Yeah.
And how much different is Daniel Jones and Alex Smith? How much different?
No, Alex had an injury history. I mean, by the time he got to Kansas City, he was healthier.
Right.
So there wasn't as big of a narrative.
And he had a longer, probably, track record of getting his team to the playoffs.
With San Francisco
like
down the stretch.
Right. And even with the Chiefs when he was there, they won a lot of games with Alex Smith as the quarterback.
Well, look at what he did with Washington, too, before he got here.
Right, but in terms of overall level of quarterback, right? I mean, I think Daniel Jones maybe with just the actual physical profile and his talent is probably maybe on a little bit of a higher level than Smith. Arm strength, speed, things like that.
Maybe better overall athlete, sure.
But again, much like I mentioned with Justin Fields, similar tiered quarterback, like it's not that much different. So what did the Chiefs do? They had a guy that got them into the playoffs. I believe won at least one playoff game for them in Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken. But he certainly won playoff games in San Francisco, that's for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But they said, you know what? We're in a position where we think we have a chance to get an upgrade. And they traded up and they made that move, right?
Also, Alex wasn't any youngster
Correct.
at that point, too.
Correct.
I
He
mean,
was,
remember.
What, 30, 32, 33?
But, I mean, I think the Chiefs said Alex is not going to be our guy forever.
Right, and Daniel's
so
only
we've got to start
27 or whatever
preparing.
it
It's a little bit different from that standpoint.
Very fair.
Yeah.
But don't let good be the enemy of great, right? Is the old cliche. So, But again, maybe again, that doesn't mean that Daniel Jones still can't be a starter in week 1 and be a really important part of your team and prove that he's still a really good NFL quarterback if you draft a quarterback high. Now, do you eventually have to choose between the two? Absolutely. But again, look at the Bears. Is it a bad thing that they have the chance to draft an awesome quarterback and have a quarterback that other teams would value at the same time? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
And it's also nice when you have both of those guys on rookie contracts, too. It
Bingo.
helps. So that's what Chicago's looking at. But, once again, reliability is the key operating phrase. And I think the Giants, even if they feel really good about Daniel Jones, and there's upside because he's not an old man, it's just a matter of, can you bank on him lasting a season? And it's hard, John. Nobody in the front office can even answer that because you don't know how the 2024 season
Joe Shane
is going to play out.
said as much in his post-game press conference, right?
But that has to influence the decision because you don't want to then go through another season where you lose him, God forbid, and then you're back to square one.
And this is obviously a conversation we'll have at the offseason.
Yeah.
But I just think as we close the door and wrap the gift on 2023 on what you learned, and you see Patrick Mahomes just be Patrick Mahomes, just shows you the importance of that position. Again, Brock Purdy didn't. The fact that we haven't even barely mentioned Brock Purdy during the show, Lance, this wasn't a Brock Purdy problem.
No, he played a really good game. There wasn't anything that he did that was egregious.
Had no turnovers.
And he's done that all season. That's what's so crazy about everybody and the way they talk about it.
He's really not. He's not. Whether or not you like the phrase game manager, he's not just this check down Charlie. Take care of the ball.
He took shots down the field. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And everybody manages the game. Every single quarterback manages the game.
However
their
you
job.
want to phrase it, it's fine. But he's a guy that can make plays for you, not a guy that just has plays made around him. Is the point I'm trying to make. Lance, good show, my friend.
Absolutely.
All right. If the office is open tomorrow, we're supposed to be getting lots of snow, anywhere from, last I heard, 3 to 6 inches around the city, north and west, anywhere from like 6 to 12. The Giants facility is kind of in between that north and west in the city, so I imagine, half a foot. But again, it's the weather. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? But if the office is closed, we're not going to have a show. But if we do have a show, it'll be me and Jonathan Casilla. So hopefully that happens. We're here. We're able to do it. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. For Lance Meno, I'm John Schmelk. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. If we don't, stay safe in the snow, everybody, and have some fun with your kids if you have them.
Introducing the Lisa Chill Collection, your answer to hot nights. These mattresses beat the heat with ultra-cool covers, whisking away heat for the perfect sleep temperature. Save up to $460 on Chill mattresses and get 2 free pillows when you shop now. iHeart listeners can save an extra $50 off by visiting lisa.com/iHeart. That's LEESA.com/iHeart. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
Looking for a better solution to keep your firearms in high-performance condition? Visit RiptideArmory.com for the most advanced proprietary gun cleaning formula on the market. Right now, get up to $40 off any cleaning kit for a limited time on RiptideArmory.com and take advantage of this amazing deal today. Riptide's 2-step cleaning kit offers state-of-the-art technology and guaranteed satisfaction. Riptide Armory is a veteran-founded business, and you can trust that all chemicals are American-made and quality tested. Shop RiptideArmory.com.